Ledger is a writing podcast and your partner in the writing room. I'm your host, Austin Wilson. Welcome to today's show. I am chatting with David O'Leary, the creator of the TV show Project Blue Book, which was on the History Channel. I love this show. I love UFOs. I love aliens, and so does David. And we don't dive into it too much because we talk about writing. It's a writing show, but man, I would love to talk about aliens with David, but we focus on the writing on this episode. But he created the show. He wrote 4 episodes of the show. He did a lot. He's the executive producer. The show starred Aidan Gillen, which you probably know as Littlefinger from the Game of Thrones show, although he was also Tommy Carcetti in The Wire, which he's great in. He's great always. He's great in Project Blue Book. He's great. The whole cast is great. So Aidan Gillen plays the real-life UFO investigator, Dr. J. Allen Hynek, and if you are a UFO fan, you will know the name, but if you're not, hey, watch the show and you'll learn about the real-life cases that they dramatize in the show. But it's a full-blown scripted show. I love it. There's 2 seasons out. You can find it online on Amazon, Apple TV, all those places. And David is also currently writing an audio series for PocketFM called The Ghost Walker, which you can go check out right now. We talk about how the show Project Blue Book evolved into a series where the actual Project Blue Book already exists in the first episode. And yes, we do talk about Surf Dracula. If you know, okay. But if you don't, gear up to learn about Surf Dracula. He talks about what it was like, having the show compete against other shows that the History Channel was thinking of buying or greenlighting straight to a series, and how Robert Zemeckis, Mr. Back to the Future himself, helped that along. How much the job of a TV show creator and executive producer and also writer equates to doing a lot of things that aren't writing, and also what it's like for the old work-life balance while a TV show you created is currently running. So a lot to talk about, and we even include a little discussion about anyone who, if you want to write for TV or you maybe want to create a show. David talks a little bit about going through a show running training program for the Writers Guild. We love the Writers Guild here. Shout out to the WGA. They actually have an amazing podcast. WGA East has a fantastic podcast. I kind of wish there was more or regular episodes of it, but I do love it. But one of the reasons why the training program was so important for David is because, get this, the very first writer's room he was ever a part of was for the show he created, Project Blue Book. So there was a lot to learn, and we get into a lot of it here. As for my stuff, go to austinrwilson.com. As always, check out my work there. You can contact me through the website. You can support the show if you want to through my donate page there. I've got free fiction you can check out. You can also check out free fiction on my Substack. If you go to substack.com, it's Austin R. Wilson. And let me know what you think about the stuff there. I have more short fiction coming that way. I think I have a story I might end up publishing there, a space vampire story that I had been shopping around, but not sure where it's going to land, so potentially on Substack. I've also been doing a lot more work with Shibboleth, my weird sci-fi horror fiction publication, so watch out, a brand new story is coming there very soon with new and unseen art as of yet from Luca Visayo and more artists. Might be doing a video or an audio version of that coming up. We'll see. I'm also in school right now, so we'll kind of see what the timeline looks like. So all that stuff's going on, austinrwilson.com, like I said. Make sure you like and review and rate the show wherever you can. It really, really does help get it out to more people. But in the meantime, for right now, here is my chat with Project Blue Book creator David O'Leary. I was rewatching Project Blue Book to get ready for this, so I've seen it twice now. The big thing that I wanted to talk about right off the bat is episode 1, Project Blue Book starts, and Project Blue Book, the actual investigative body within the show, already exists in episode 1. And I really wanted to talk about that with you because I don't know if you've heard about this meme called Surf Dracula. Do you know what Surf Dracula is?
I don't. Surf Dracula.
Surf Dracula is this meme. Somebody on Twitter way back in the day was like, in the era of streaming, if you have a show called Surf Dracula, we have to spend an entire season before that guy gets on that surfboard. It's this backstory about how he became a Surf Dracula. And then the very end of episode 10, he finally gets a surfboard and we maybe see 5 minutes of surfing. But back in the day, if a show was called Surf Dracula, he'd be surfing every single episode and be in a Surf Dracula every episode. So I want to talk to you about writing Project Blue Book and how in your series called Project Blue Book exists. in the very first episode. We don't build up to it. And I want to talk about the process of how you arrived at that.
Yeah, sure. I think part of it, it's funny, that's a great question. I've never been asked that question. I think part of it came from my respective UFO history and knowing that there were two precursors to Project Blue Book. There was something called Project Sign and something called Project Grudge. And so the Air Force was already looking into this stuff. And by the way, Hynek was already involved before we kind of involved him in Project Blue Book.
Right.
So, one thing that hardly ever changed, and all kinds of things did change, because like once you have a script, but then it becomes television, all kinds of things change for logistical reasons, for notes and all that. One thing that never changed was this notion that we wanted Hynek to be this outsider who gets recruited in. And so it had to exist, right? It had to already exist. But now it was this idea that like UFOs are ramping up. We need this like civilian astrophysicist to be the voice of reason for the public to like explain that there's nothing to see here, that like everything going on is very mundane and very explainable. So I think that became sort of the reason why I set it up in a way where the program already exists, but Hynek's going to be our window into that program. And he's going to, so that recruitment scene early on where he gets brought in and Quinn is kind of talking to him about like Roswell and, War of the Worlds and all that kind of stuff. That was always in there. And that scene was always sort of like a benchmark scene for us.
Yeah. So that's interesting. Because in my head, and maybe this is cynical or, just my remove from the industry in general, it was get Project Blue Book as fast as possible into like the storyline. And I love it, obviously. And I was also curious, obviously, about reception of audience, because like you and I know what Project Sign and Project Grudge is, but the general public is not going to be like, oh, and there were two other investigatory excursions before then. So it was always like when you sat down to first write this, you were always like, episode 1, we're going to see Project Blue Book as a thing within the first like 10 minutes.
Yes, I always wanted to hop in where it already existed. And you're absolutely right, Austin. Like, the general public, thankfully, has maybe only a vague knowledge of UFO history, if they have any at all. Yeah. But listen, it was a delicate balance because, there are diehard UFO historians in the UFO historian community who I'm sure were like, oh my God, this show is taking all kinds of liberties. And remember, we were on history, so we had to kind of honor the history too. Yeah. Something we came up with early on, this was something I pitched history because I knew their brand. And this happened even before they bought the show, was I pitched them this idea that we could create these interstitial short videos that would draw a line in the sand between the dramatization of the show you had just seen and the real life, and a little bit of an educational short little micro documentary about the real life case that inspired this week's episode. And that's precisely what we did. And it really became this line in the sand of like, what you just saw is television and is a drama, but you should understand that it's all rooted in historical events that we kind of thrown into a blender to try to make a piece of entertainment, but know that every case is real, know that Project Blue Book is real, know that Dr. J. Allen Hynek is real. So it allowed us, I think, we got really lucky that history had both documentary and scripted backgrounds to kind of be able to do this. And it really allowed us to draw a line in the sand and kind of separate fact from dramatization, as I think I'll say. Not fiction, but fact from dramatization.
Dramatization. Yeah. So, and I'm interested in that. There's a lot of stuff with the show where I'm curious about. Well, I mean, my listeners also, I think, would be interested to know, because the show debuted in October 2019 and ran for 2 seasons. I think it should have run for more, but history didn't ask me. But so October 2019 is your debut. How long before that had you lived with this project and the sort of ramping up to the show debuting? Had you been working on it for years, or was it a thing that came together quickly? Where did you start with it?
Oh, years. And by the way, I think our air date, not that it matters, but was January 2019, and then we came back again in January in 2020, right before COVID, for season 2. But in America anyway. But It's all good.
Right.
Yeah, I mean, this project had been percolating for a long, long time. So I first became aware of Hynek and of Project Blue Book and of the fact that this like civilian astrophysicist recruit, who totally thought UFOs were BS, completely switched sides through his tenure with Blue Book. I became aware of that back in like 2008 when Peter Jennings, the late Peter Jennings, ABC News reporter, did this deep dive documentary called Seeing is Believing, which was wonderful. And if you've never seen it, it's like great. It does a deep dive into the Phoenix Lights. And it really goes back into America's very bizarre and strange history with UFOs. And in it, he featured Hynek. And at the time, I was like a creative executive or a VP of production at a production company. I wasn't even a writer yet. I was working in story development. Like I was like who writers would bring projects to. And I was like, this is a movie. I feel like this is a movie. And because I was really like working in the movie business at that time. Then I put it to bed for a long, long time and always kind of thought like it could be a movie. But years later, this is like 2014, 2015. I wanted to break into television. I had some success in movies, but I really wanted to break into TV. And sitting around having like drinks with my wife, that was the germination of it. And I actually still have like the paper we wrote this down on because I was like, we're banging our heads against ideas. And she's like, well, you love UFOs. You should write something with that. And I was like, what if I did like a real life Project Blue Book? I'm sorry, a real life X-Files set in the time of Mad Men based on Alan Hynek's life. And that sort of became, and I wrote like real life X-Files set in the time of Mad Men on like and I still have that little sheet of paper. And that became the germination of it. Then I went off and wrote a pilot. Then I sat on that pilot for like a year because I got busy with other stuff. And then I had to go back in and make it better. And then thankfully, the stars kind of aligned. And I think we sold it in the summer of 2016. And then we developed it and we got a series order Memorial Day weekend 2017. And then we started the writer's room in the fall of 2017. And then it aired January of 2019. So, I mean, I lived with it for real as a television show for like 5 years. And it was probably, and it consumed about 4 years of my life, like in a very serious way. But hey, I mean, it was a dream come true and it was like an absolutely incredible time in my life. And I look back on it really fondly.
So when you say developed it, for anyone who doesn't know, what's that mean? You sold it,
right?
You
developed I sold it. Yeah. Now most TV actually sells on pitch, but I was an unproven television writer at that time. I had done some projects I had sold as movies, but I didn't have any produced credits, but I was like a working writer, And so when we developed it, basically we sold the original pilot, spec pilot that nobody paid me to write. I just wrote it as a sort of sample of my voice. And I should mention, like, I didn't think that anyone was ever going to make my expensive period UFO show. Right. And thank fucking God they did, right?
Yeah.
But I also sold I'd put together a whole series Bible and we sold that. And then we basically developed it. And the development process is basically you're working with your partners at your studio. I had three sort of partners. I had Image Movers, which is Robert Zemeckis' production company, and his executives. Like they were my like partners, in the trenches with me. Then I had the studio, which was A&E Studios. And then I had the network, which was History. And they all have development executives who kind of weigh in with notes and thoughts. So we did a lot of work just kind of finessing the script. And then about 6 or 7 months later is when things got real. And they were like, hey, like, we're going to make a series. We're going to have 4 or 5 people do presentations where you're going to compete for a series order. Yours is one of them. Like, so eventually I started to like keep going, but like eventually I had to like reverse engineer a pitch anyway for the show. Yeah. And they flew me to my hometown of New York City and I had to give this whole big presentation, which I can talk about if you want.
So competing, that's the part I think in there that leapt out at me is that you're competing for a series order. So tell me about that.
Yeah. And that's very rare. Like this doesn't usually happen. Yeah. Usually it's sort of like, the way the process works is like, the network is sort of made enough shows that they have multiple slots. You know what I mean? Like Netflix is just like, we love this. We want to make this. We're going to make this. Right. But we make 30 other shows also. With History, one of the reasons why there was this sort of competition was they had done some scripted shows, but they had very few slots, right? And they're like, okay, they had a military show called Six. They had this kind of like sword and sandals kind of night show called like Night. Oh, I forget the name of it now, Nightland or something. And then they were like trying to gear up on a third show, but they weren't quite sure what it was. And the way that they greenlight shows is they have this whole board of executives that kind of oversees the family of what they call A&E networks, which includes A&E, the network, History, Lifetime, and a couple other networks. So it was just a different process. But actually, I think for me, it ended up being like a wonderful process because it was just like, okay, I'm going to like battle in New York for like a straight to series order. And this is really true. Like 20 executives went around from room to room to room, hearing 4 or 5 different presentations. And I think mine was the last. And what I remember, people telling me was make it as visual as you possibly can.
Yeah.
And leave it all out on the table, basically. And so we did. First of all, we had Robert Zemeckis, like on a Jumbotron big screen in the conference room, reporting in from set about like on his Brad Pitt movie about how much he likes the project.
Yeah, that's a big one.
That never hurts, right? That was a big one. And it was really cool to kind of have him do that live. Then we showed what's called a Rip-O-Matic trailer that I'd put together, like a fake trailer for the show, because I'm a big believer in like, show them how this thing can be marketed, right? So I cut this trailer. I spent weeks on this thing. I'm not like an editor by trade, but as a producer, I had cut some Rip-O-Matics, and sort of I have a bit of a background in the movie trailer world as well. So I like wrote a trailer, I found all the imagery, and I cut it together. That helped because the trailer came out. I mean, I really tried to make that work. Then I reverse engineered a pitch of the show from the Bible, because I was told, listen, expect that some of the people in the room have never read the script. And I was like, oh, okay. So I had to like reverse engineer a whole pitch, and I had slides going while that was running as well, with like a fake poster for the show. Here's who Hynek is. Here's who Captain Quinn is, like all the different characters in the show. So it was very visual. And then, that was the first 30 minutes. And then I answered like 20, 30 minutes of Q&A. And just kind of left it all out there. And thankfully, they really saw the vision for it.
So when you say reverse engineered, my head goes to, what are the questions that I'm going to be asked about this? And specifically, what are questions that I'm going to be asked about this from people who know nothing about the script, maybe because they didn't read it, and maybe not. I don't know. In those people's defenses, like, there's a lot of stuff to read. Like,
100%. Well, thankfully, I had a bit of a background in pitching, right? At this point, I had already been doing some pitching. I also I teach at a film school on and off like through the years, and I had taught pitching. And so I really was like following my own kind of like theories and practicalities on pitching.
Yeah.
Like I had a compelling intro. I state the log line. I talk about the characters. I walk them through the synopsis of the pilot, and then I walk them through the series, making sure they understand like how the characters are going to change, what the engine of the show is going to be, so that it's going to keep twisting and turning. So I had like all of that map. And by the way, I had already put all that into the Bible, but the Bible was like 20 pages.
Yeah.
And like I had to, with images in its own right, I kind of tried to make it look like a magazine, pulling all these like 1950s UFO shots, but also just just America in the 1950s and the Cold War and atomic war and panic and paranoia and all that good stuff. But I mean, that pitch went through multiple iterations and multiple kind of vetting by my producers. And thankfully, like the studio was really helpful too. Like they wanted this show. And so they were really helpful in guiding me as well. But in terms of what went into it, like, I think the thing I had to remember was that everybody, when pitching this show is like, not everybody believes in UFOs or thinks there's even anything to it. Right. So I think my very first sentence was, whether you're a skeptic or a believer, UFOs is a global phenomena that mystifies millions, or billions is maybe what I should have said. But I think I said millions. And what I was trying to remind them was that this show is going to be for both sides, skeptics and believers, and it's a global phenomena. So this show can air globally, which is exactly what it did. I mean, it ended up airing in 160 countries around the world, which was amazing. But that was that, and then I just sort of built it out from there. And then of course tried to make sure that they understood the drama the case of the week engine that we had, thankfully, for all the 12,000 unexplained, or 700 unexplained cases out of the 12,000.
Yeah.
Stuff like
that. A lot of stuff to cover. And gosh, so writing for TV and for film, I'm curious about all of the stuff that you have to do that's not writing. And I talked to some writers who, prose writers, still have to do things that aren't writing, especially now where, someone's asking you to promote yourself and essentially be your own PR agent every once in a while. So with writing this show and stuff that you've done since then, ballpark it percentage wise, how much are you writing versus not writing? Like if you're,
oh my God. Yeah. There's so much listen, and I didn't know this because I was new to television. Right. And remember, I was a writer who had sold some movies, but had no produced credits. Writing something and it going into production, especially in TV, because in movies, eventually, you write the script and when it's done, and even if it gets made, the director takes over. You know what I mean? And it's it's up and running and the director is making all those decisions and hiring the crew and, working with his keys and all that. TV is entirely different, right? TV, the writers are the creator of a show, the showrunner of a show is the director of the show. Right. So I'll always be really proud that I got a show straight to series order all on my own, but I was also a completely new and unproven commodity in television. So one of our very first meetings after that was we need to hire a showrunner. And at the time I was so green. I was I thought I'm the showrunner.
It's me, right?
Yeah, it's me. And they're and now I of course get it. It's millions and millions of dollars. This is a startup, a television show is a startup company. And it's and you're going to become an employer of you're going to be $100 million budgeted company, and you're going to be hiring hundreds and hundreds of employees. And if you've never done this before, they're going to need to bring in somebody who has. Thankfully, A&E history was great. They actually vetted 4 showrunners. They understood that the creator show, for me, I was okay, if we're doing this, I want to learn everything. I want to be involved in every meeting. I'm going to do the showrunner training program with the Writers Guild. I'm going to be the co-pilot then, and that's exactly what they wanted for me. And so they vetted, and this is something I've even gone back to advise other people who've been in my position. They vetted 4 showrunners and they let me pick.
Oh, nice.
Right. So it's I always the analogy I always make is I'm like the bride, I was I'm getting married, but I got to pick my husband as it were. Right. Or whatever. I'm getting, getting the dowry or whatever it is. But and thankfully there was a clear front runner and he's wonderful. His name's Sean Jablonski and him and he loves UFOs as much as me. He goes to all the conventions. He walks the walk. He's an amazing writer. He's an amazing person. He's one of my closest friends. And that collaboration began. And I'd be lying if I said it wasn't bumpy in the beginning because I had to adjust to not being the sole visionary of the show.
Sure.
But I have a whole presentation I've done just on that dynamic and how to make that dynamic work. But eventually we did find, after a couple of butting heads, we found a way to really make that work. And I was also just in the state of learning. But sorry, it's a long-winded way of answering your question about there's so much about being an executive producer of a show and creating a show and show running a show. And I was co-show running in the second season that that isn't right.
Right.
And that is everything from hiring to casting to dealing with problems to managing people. A lot of it is managing, and a lot of it is solving problems in terms of how you are going to physically make this show, editing, working in a writer's room with other writers. We had some wonderful writers. So, it takes on a life of its own. But I always considered every kind of department to be writers of the show also.
Yeah.
We were such how the show looked, our camera department, how the props help tell the story. Our prop master, the VFX were telling the story, like our VFX supervisor, all people whose names I remember, of course. I could give them all shout outs. John Gadecki was our VFX supervisor. All these wonderful people. I mean, C. Kim Miles, who was our DP, who's gone on to huge, huge shows. He won a what is it, an American Cinematography Association award, sort of like the equivalent of a writer winning a Writers Guild award.
Yeah.
For the show. These guys, they made the show immensely better. But you hire good people, and so there's a lot that goes on that isn't writing, and then there's a lot that is writing.
As I was, going through the credits for the show and looking at the episodes, in the first season, you write 2 episodes by yourself. You co-wrote 2 episodes, one with Thania St. John. She's a founding member of the League of Hollywood Women Writers, which is cool. And then another one with Emily Brochin, I think is how it's said.
Yeah. Oh, I don't know if did I co-write one with Emily? I can't remember.
That's what it's. Yeah. The credits listed it.
That's what it said. Yeah. I know. I wrote the. Oh, maybe I did season 2. I wrote. The pilot. Although there were all kinds of changes, by the way, in the first 2 episodes. We swapped cases. I mean, all kinds of crazy stuff happened. But yes, I was fortunate to be able to write the premiere and the finale of each season, and then like an episode or 2 sprinkled in.
So that's the big thing, that because I haven't gotten a chance to talk to someone that was probably as busy as you were doing these kinds of things, because for me, writing is a really, really specific, like lonely, which it's not to say that that's not the case when you sit down to write, but after you have a TV script or a film script, the amount of other people who will be interacting with it before it becomes the thing that you're hoping to have it become. And I do want to get back to that concept because you said something about it earlier. I'm just so interested in, one, work-life balance and balancing between writing, being an executive producer who solves those problems, and then going home. I'm curious about what your life was like while this show was on.
Sure. I mean, what I'll say just quickly on your first point before I get to the work-life balance was like the wonderful thing about, writing is very lonely, and, but there's something wonderful about that too. Like I love just like having nothing to do but shutting my office door.
Oh, it's awesome.
Going in. I mean, why else do we do this, right? But in TV, you have a writer's room, right? So much of it, when you're not writing your episode, you're like all episodes and all stories in episodes, basically outside the pilot, are broken. It's like sort of terminology, like we break the story, we figure out what the story is in the room. So like in a weird way, like in a great writer's room, almost every writer can take some credit for every episode. Yeah. And then whoever's writing that episode is just whoever's up. You know what I mean? And so in that regard, it's not a lonely experience in that way, because you got your fellow writers. And that's why TV is so great.
Yeah.
It's because like a writer's room is like, it's like 5 brains working on 6, 7 brains working on the same problem.
Yeah. And then the work-life balance piece. I mean, I'm going to be frank, like when you have a show, going, it's really hard. Work-life balance is tough. Because also, the writer's room was in LA. It shoots up in Vancouver. I wanted to be on set as much as possible to learn as much about producing on set as you can, especially for my own episodes. But I made it a bit my business to pop up every sort of block, because we did block shooting, where we'd shoot 2 episodes at once simultaneously, which is with one director covering 2 episodes, which is saves you a lot of money and is a really great way to do it, but is like a scheduling. Oh my God, it's just crazy. You got to be well ahead of things to make it work. But it's hard. It's like, I have still young children, but I had very young children then at the time. I had like a 4-year-old or a 5-year-old and like a newborn, so it was very hard on my wife. But at the same time, she understood that this was like, living your dream kind of a thing. And, you just live and breathe the show, especially when it's yours. I've staffed on other shows where, you care deeply about the show, but it's not yours to carry on your shoulders and see through every aspect of it. You're really focused on the writing, right? But like with the show, you're getting 100 emails a day when it's yours, and you're making all kinds of decisions about everything. Like VFX which prop, like you're looking at like so many different things all at once, things you got to change in the script for budgetary reasons, edits, you're in the editing bay, and it's all happening simultaneously because as some scripts, some projects some episodes are in post-production, some are in production, some are in pre-production, you're outlining the next one. So it's this crazy thing. The showrunner training program actually was super helpful and just kind of, like trying to like give you tips on how to have some work-life balance, but also just preparing you that like it's, there's going to be it's going to feel crazy and that's okay.
Where's the showrunner training at?
It's so the showrunner training program is at the Guild. So the Writers Guild sort of offers this program to two different kinds of people, usually writers who have been like staffing in a lot of rooms and are ready to showrun maybe their own show or other people's shows. And then writers like me who are in that rare position where they get thrown into the deep end, where they're relatively new, but here they find themselves learning television while their show is being created, which was definitely me. I mean, the first writer's room I was ever in was on a show I had created. So, it was such a massive, that first season was like such a huge, learning curve every step of the way. Cause like, we didn't even talk about like the fact that you got to go like get interviewed by publications and go do a ton of press and things, and all that, interacting with the fans and, all that kind of stuff, which I absolutely love, but I had to learn how to do.
Yeah. And that's a good way to tie back into the thing that I was going to ask about that you said, which was, I never thought that they would make my show. I never thought that they would make my Mad Men Meets X-Files show. And I think I do think that that's a normal like reaction to the thing that people are working on most of the time. I have had the moments where I was like, this thing I'm writing's it's going to get published. It's going to be the thing. And I've never been right. And it's not that it's a weird mindset.
It's a weird thing. And it's so funny because it's one of the few times I've ever written something where I really wrote it. I've said this before. I wrote Project Blue Book as a sample of my voice. That was the intention of it. I was like, listen, of course I had deep down, I was like, they gotta make this show, right? But at the time I was just like, they're not going to. Like, I was a real rationalist about it. And actually at the time I was adapting this graphic novel and I had like a big female director on board to produce, and it was this really cool, fun thing. I really thought that had a shot. You know what I mean? I thought that would be like, that could happen. Like that could be this cool kind of fantastical crime series, and Blue Book will just get me like into rooms and have me talking about, other things I want to do. And by the way, that's basically what it was doing up until the first couple of months we shot it. We didn't find a home for it right away. And then eventually like Image Movers read it, really liked it, wanted to try to help us figure it out. And then, essentially the stars aligned where my agent was having lunch with like a studio exec at A&E being like, we were looking for something in the 1950s and we have no idea what it is.
And you're like,
right. And then it was like, they read it. Like, it was just sort of, it all kind of came together. And I think when I knew that it had a little bit of magic dust on it was they read it, right around the time Image Movers was coming on board. And they didn't know that. And they actually called my agent being like, we feel like this would be like amazing for like a Robert Zemeckis. And he's like, that's so funny because Robert Zemeckis is coming in to produce. And it was like, and then they were like, holy shit, we should take this to history. And then, because they're ramping up on scripted. And it was like, oh. And so I remember I remember where I was when my agent called me to tell me that. I was like, oh, that's the little luck thing that you need sometimes. And then we sold it.
Speaking of that, I was reading some other interviews with you, and I saw a New York Film Academy interview you'd done, and you said some stuff in there about luck.
Yeah.
And the big thing I try to talk to with a lot of writers is like, even though you might have that thought where you're like, they're probably not going to make this show, but you deep down are like, but they fucking should make this show. But they literally can't if you don't write the pilot, and the luck can't happen if you haven't just continued like marching forward. And seeing you talk about it and hearing you talk about it is relieving.
Thanks. No, that is so true. I mean, it absolutely, like I sometimes joke, like, in some regard, I think this was really true, especially on Blue Book. You have to I willed it into existence in some ways, right? I mean, I remember being very superstitious and kind of careful with like every step in that process, especially once we sold it. Because then I was just like, okay, I got to make this rewrite great, and I got to nail this like practice pitch, and I got to build the best trailer I can. And like, I just remember like being so precious about it. But I think there's something good in that, like, you just keep making it better, keep making it better, keep making it better. And it's one of those things where, like, listen, I try to bring that work ethic into everything, but like in a weird way, like it'll never, like nothing's ever like your first big thing, and it was just like, and at the same time, I think the point you're hitting, Austin, which is so true, is like you really never know, and like one of the irony there is Blue Book was one of the few things I wrote just for the joy of writing it, and it went all the way. And so I feel like it's sometimes something I'm trying to get back to, where it's like, instead of just like everything I work on I like, but it's like trying to just like find the joy in it and just be like, hey, this is fun, even if regardless of what happens. Because I think when you let go a little bit of the outcome, that's when the outcome, at least in my experience, tends to really happen for you. It's just like you're just writing the best possible thing you can, and you're not thinking ahead to like other things, And it's just like putting out the best work you can, but like really just enjoying the journey. And it's like I always feel like with authorship, it's like if you're really enjoying it, it's like hopefully it's like if you're like I think it's good, then other people will too,
I don't think it's maybe necessarily only for TV or film writing or things that require other huge teams. But I do think it unites a lot of writing that ends up being published by other people, not by yourself. Like if you're self-publishing stuff, which I have nothing against.
Yeah.
But showing people that you believe in your thing and that you believe enough that you're not going to let it go. Or I've talked to a lot of people about the concept of like, you might never find a person who believes more in your thing more than you do, but you can find other people who are like, I trust you and I see that you believe in this thing. And my belief is in your energy and your dedication. And for TV and film, I think that seems really important to be able to show people that.
It's huge. I mean, mainly what I do now is pitching, right? And pitching literally has to be that. It's like, you really have to kind of communicate your enthusiasm, your excitement, your detail oriented. I've thought through everything. You can ask me, why this show or movie needs to be told now, why you have to be the person to tell it, all that stuff. You want it to feel infectious. And in some regards, I think about this a lot. It's like, there are so many talented writers, but it's like pitching is this like other, like, I didn't realize how much when I was getting into TV, how much of it is really performance and is bringing all of that care to life, and it's like, I spend as much care on my pitch scripts, like the dialogue I say, because I leave nothing to chance. I do verbatim kind of pitch as I do on the scripts, because that's how you get the initial people on board. And I think the good executives and the people who get involved, they can tell when it's like really authentic and, and when it's more like, do you love this? Like, or is this a piece of business for you? And I mean, with Blue Book, it was like, I think one of the reasons it was such a dream come true is I really am a UFO nut. And like, I really was writing something that I loved. And so it was like it was like, I couldn't have asked for a better project to get made, because it was like, oh my God, I get to like see this passion of mine actually unfold on screen and get to like tell other people about it, like, and live it and live inside of it. Like, it was just amazing. So it's like, I try to keep that alive when I build things, to just be like, you gotta love it, because because you might get lucky and then you're stuck with it, right? So
Absolutely. It's going to consume you, which I do think has I think the positives outweigh the negatives, especially for story and telling story and getting to interact with people. But belief being a funny connector between both, walking into the executive room and making sure they know that you believe in the thing, and then the UFO stories themselves. I interact with the UFO world in a really specific way because I'm not a 100% skeptic, but I really want evidence. And unfortunately, there's a lot of people within the UFO field that you can say anything. You can just say anything.
Right.
But the big thing, and I've talked to people about this before and on online and in person and stuff, is we want to feel like we're a part of a thing, and we want story. So I even accept, I love interacting with stories, with UFO stories, even if I'm like, this is bullshit. But man, I'm having a blast. And
Right.
I think when we embrace the idea of storytelling rather than just saying this is a true story, saying there's a kernel of truth here, but really this is about us interacting with a concept that could expand what it means to be a human. There's not really a question in there, but
but you're hitting it, and it's also like what's cool about UFOs is it in some ways connects to our story. It's like, what is our story? Where are we? What's the origin of our story? What I had a friend say this to me once, and I was like, oh my God, it's so true. I can't believe I've never thought of the world this way. We are on an episode of Lost every single day.
Yeah.
We wake up on an island called Earth. We have no idea why we're here, like what this is really going on, right? Like what the nature of our reality truly is. We might think we do. We don't.
Yeah.
We're seeing like a small sliver of it, right?
Yeah.
And it always stuck with me. And it's like I always felt that UFOs and the mystery around UFOs was a part of answering that question. It was like one of J.J. Abrams's mystery box layers or something like that. And by the way, Alan Hynek did also. I don't have the quote in front of me, but I closed out my pitch with sort of Alan Hynek, a famous quote of his where it's like, I would not spend another minute on this subject if I didn't think that it was like fundamental to us understanding like our, not only like our place in the universe, but the universe itself. And something like that. And it was just like, yeah, that's it. So it's like, it's a piece of our story also because, listen, I'm pretty convinced that, like it or not, we live in a UFO reality of some kind. What that is, I'm not so sure.
Yeah.
But I mean, on storytelling too, like the thing I've been trying to think about lately, just going back to your point about, belief and all that is, it's like, sometimes I'll be like, why do I do this? Like, why did I choose this, like, mercurial profession? Like, what is this? Like, because it's like, it's ups and downs and everything in between. And it's like, I got a mortgage. I got kids. Like, it's not like, it's all that. And then I remember why. And I think the why has to do with, at the end of the day, when you create and write something, you're bringing it's both birthing something into the world, but it's also this sort of profound self-discovery, because like we've all writers have had the experience of like, wow, I did not know that story or that project was inside of me until I started creating it. And so there's always this wonderful, I hopefully writers feel this way regardless of the reception of anything or if it's a success or not, is like they've created something that they can leave behind. Somebody can find it somewhere if you put it online, and who knows how that story might affect them, right? Or their stories or their lives or whatever. But B, it's like you are leaving a part of yourself, probably the most precious part, on the in an imprint on the world. And it's very satisfying that it'll live on forever. Like, and I think that way sometimes. I'm like, like no matter what happens from here, I've gotten a few under my belt, like, and that feels really good. But even if it's something smaller than that, like something you put online, like I'm working on this audio series right now for a company called PocketFM, and it's really fucking cool to see like fans kind of engaging with it. And I'm like, holy shit, like a couple hundred people are reading it, like are listening to this right now. Like it's really cool to just know that that's happening. But then you feel this like responsibility, also to be like, shit, I better bring it. It's really fun, and it's an engaging way to, and like for me, nothing beat interacting with the fans. Like nothing beat. I would live tweet the show, and you would see live engagement with the fans who are fans of the show watching it live. You're interacting with them, telling them behind the scenes tidbits or this historical fact about UFOs or whatever. But it was like my heart would be racing when that was going on. Even though I know it was like me staring at a computer screen, but you would just see the live reactions. It was like, holy shit, this lives for other people. It's not just me. Yeah. And that, and like, I can't wrap my head around it fully, but like 2.5 million Americans watch the show every week. And like, just that was our numbers over the course of the show. And that's like, wow, that's just really like a cool feeling to have.
That is such a big part of, because I have that thought a lot, like, why the fuck am I doing this? What's my problem? Why did I choose this?
Right.
And going back to like the moments when I felt like, oh, it's because I read that Ray Bradbury book, and I would swear to someone that I literally was in a different place than where I was sitting. Like that's how real it felt to me. And the idea that you could write this show and all these people could help make the show, and then I see the show and we connect over these things, even though we've never met, but we have this shared language that we understand an aspect of each other, like very, very viscerally. It's shocking kind of that there's not more, like that's one of the reasons why when I see the people talk about there's no one reading anymore, or there's not as much reading as there used to be, I'm like, I just don't get it, because
well, here's what I'll tell you.
Connecting.
It's so funny about the reading. I just had this conversation with my wife. Here's hopefully some hope. I got a 10-year-old daughter. She consumes far more books than I ever will. She is a voracious reader. I do think that, and she's not even like a very like bookish kid. Like people will have like an image of like some like girl with glasses or something. No, she's like, but she just loves to read, right? And I do think that my hope is I think this next generation, not the folks in their 20s now, no disrespect to that generation, but like, which I think there has been a decline in reading, but I think the generation that is being parented now, that are kids, that have parents who grew up in the 80s, you know what I mean? Like I'm 46 years old. I was born in 1980. I grew up reading. I grew up like analog. I was an analog kid. We also now are much clearer about the destructive nature of screens and too much screen time and all that kind of stuff. I think that generation, you're going to see a real uptick in sort of a bit of a return to certain analog forms, or or at the very least, sort of an appreciation for a less sort of ADD generation, and more of an appreciation for long form storytelling, for television. That's what I've been seeing out here. I know in my little bubble of Southern California, but I've seen a lot of kids really like embracing books. And if they're watching TV, they're watching shows. They're not watching YouTube. I don't let my kids watch YouTube. No offense to YouTube, but like the short form content stuff, I'm trying to steer them out of that. I'm trying to be like, no, consume things that took a lot of time and a lot of energy, and a lot of thought. And that's and that's every book. That's every television show, because you just have hundreds of people involved. It doesn't matter what it is, but not, just not the idiots, banging his head with a frying pan on YouTube. Like I can't do that. But, any other form, I sort of encourage them to.
Even the shorter stuff, like if I ever find myself in a situation, and I don't want to be like the like school marmish dork who's like, oh, you like that short form video? Could I recommend a short story to you? Like, but also it's like you will connect with this short story more than you're thinking you're going to. Like, I just try to make people, that if I get the chance, and obviously I'm a giant nerd about it because I have a writing podcast, but that's part of it, like telling people about the stuff. And you also said something. Oh, go ahead.
Oh, I was just going to say, and short form content can be amazing and really powerful and really effective, so long as it's done so with like with care. You know what I mean? Like I know like the micro drama phase, the kind of vertical but not, verticals phase is upon us. I'm all for it. I just want them to be good. You know what I mean? Like, I'm like, if they're good, I'm in. Like, that's cool.
Yeah.
That's a fun way to like binge a little, like a cool, interesting story that's told in bite-sized chunks. I love it. But like, I just want it to be, I want it to be the thing where it's like, where it's told well and not this thing that's in the background or this thing to just draw my attention to sell advertising. Like the product itself needs to be done with care. And then I'm so long as that's the case, I'm in for any kind of, whatever it may be.
Yeah. Well, and also the PocketFM, like you're writing small chunks of a story. Like,
each chapter is like 1,500 words, something like that. So it's like, it's a nice little size chunk because once they put it to like narration with sound design, they put in music. It's like, you end up, it's like you get to see this like kind of audio book come to life. It's kind of wild. And they use AI to like figure out where the music should kick in and where the sound effects should come in and all this stuff. But it's like 10-minute chunks, you know what I mean? Something like that. Each chapter's like 10 minutes. But it's been really it's just been a fun experiment for me to kind of play around in a different form outside of film and TV, and something where it can just be up. It's like up on the site. You can easily find it, and it's like, and then there it is, and it's like it just kind of, and it's this, and it's like it for me, it's a new exploration into being a novelist. Is I guess what I'll say, because like this is the first sort of classic like book I've ever tried to do. I've strictly done films and movies. I've strictly written, outside of like a couple of other small things, I've basically just written teleplays and screenplays.
So, sort of wrapping up now. So, what's the name of the show for people to check on?
Sure. It's called The Ghost Walker, and it's about a detective who can see ghosts. He's a disgraced detective who sees ghosts and basically solves the unfinished business of the dead for payment. So that's what he's doing when you meet him, but then he starts getting embroiled in this much sort of larger conspiracy. So it is a supernatural noir, is how I like to think of it. It's like a supernatural detective noir. And noir is a genre I absolutely love. I mean, even Blue Book was it's like a sci-fi noir. So I just, it's been very fun to write. It's called The Ghost Walker. Check it out on Pocket.
Hell yeah. So last two things. One, sort of related to this kind of in a thematic way. One of the other things you said in your New York Film Academy interview, I think it's from 2019.
Sure.
You talk about a career in show business, Hollywood, writing TV, writing films. And the thing that you said, I do think it applies to every kind of writing, but you said specifically that you need to learn to celebrate small victories.
Yes.
And I wanted to talk about that a little bit right as we're wrapping up. And
absolutely. I always like to wrap up with that because
it's a big one. I think.
Yeah. I mean, that's something I've been telling my students for years. It's something I think I tell myself, and it's funny, like so many great insights. I didn't get it. I had a friend tell me that was something he always admired that I did along the way. Oh. He told this to me after I think Blue Book was happening, that, you were always like, you always believed and you would celebrate those like smaller victories. And and then I was like, and then when I was like, wow, really? Because like, I feel like I was like totally like, I'm never going to fucking make it. And this business is like so hard and da 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 da. But when I look back on it, actually, I was like, no, like I did, like there was, I think momentum is so important, but I think that momentum takes time and you have to acknowledge what you have achieved in order to like build on it and continue. And so I know where I was when the first like sort of piece of like victory that I remember thinking of as a writer was after I quit being a development executive and I started writing features, I submitted a script to the Nickel Fellowship, right? And they have you rip off the title page and nobody knows you wrote it. I didn't win the Nickel Fellowship, which was like a big screenplay competition, but I placed in the Nickel Fellowship. And I remember getting like an email being like, congratulations, David, you beat out 95% of all applicants. You're in the top 5%. You're a quarterfinalist. And that was like, that was as huge of a moment practically as 5 years later, 10 years later, getting the phone call of like, congratulations, David, you have a series order, 10 episodes straight to series for like, it was just like, holy shit, maybe I can do this. And it was a small victory because remember, I didn't go anywhere further in that competition with that one, but it did give me some belief. And I think that like those small victories, maybe this is the year you get a rep. Then, next year's the year you fire that rep because they didn't do anything for you, but you get a better rep, right? And then like you start building it. And maybe you try, you branch into web fiction or you like get a script option. Like I saved my first check when it was like, I wasn't in the guild. I had a $5,000 option on a script. I have that image of a check somewhere on my computer. Like I just like sort of started to collect these things along the way. And I think all writers should. And that, by the way, another victory is just completing something. You got to celebrate. Oh, yeah. You got to celebrate that.
I love stuff like that. And seeing you talk about it, I use this program called Obsidian where I write notes in. I keep a lot of stuff in Obsidian, and I have a plugin that will give me a random note from whatever year. Just like it'll randomly grab from all of the notes that I've written, and it'll pop up. And the other day, a note popped up that I had no memory of writing.
Yeah,
and it was me listing out the things that I had accomplished, which I don't do often. But at the bottom of it said, and I legitimately had no memory of writing this, it said, "I am living the life that I want." And I was like, who the fuck wrote this?
That's so great.
It changed my day. It changed my week. And I was like, I need to like remember this as much as I can, because
you're preaching to the choir on that, because my wife is often like, when I'm down on the business or down on where my career is or whatever, she'll be like, "Hey, asshole," like, and then she'll list off the things you've done. And it's like, and here's the things you have coming up, right? Like, and it's like, here's where you are, and here you're about to shop this new thing. And it's like, which I am, right? And it's like, and it's, and it's like, she's like, you have an agent, you have a manager, you bought a house with money you made writing. Like you're shut off and just keep doing the work and keep building.
You're doing it.
Yeah. And so, but everyone has doubts, you know what I mean? Everyone has doubts. It's totally natural. But I think what you're saying, Austin, about writing down those accomplishments and writing down the things you've done and then the things you hope to do is huge. And it's like really something I've been meaning to kind of take on a little bit more, is like, that kind of gratitude and that sort of like, but then also being like, okay, so what's next? Like what's that next step?
Yeah. And also in retrospect, when you see them or when you think about them, you end up realizing like, oh, these weren't as small as I thought they were.
No,
these weren't that small.
No,
these weren't small victories.
No, oh my God. Each one builds and builds, and it's like, and then you start to hit it, like, it's like an exponential curve. Like they happen small first, then you get a bit of a breakthrough, and then you're like, shit, and then you get another breakthrough, and then you get another breakthrough. So it's true. I mean, it's never been a better time to be a writer too, because there's so many different ways you can get your stories out there. I mean, I just was listening to The Town, which is like an industry podcast, where they were talking all about how really like these short fiction things on Reddit, like that's all the rage now, right? Like this IP, grassroots IP that like, Backrooms and Obsession and all these other, movies that have changed the game. Like, that's becoming the new kind of stomping ground. So it's like, it's never been a better time to get stuff out there, original things, original stories, and just have them build an audience organically.
Yep. Do the work.
Yeah.
That's step one.
That's right. That's right.
I appreciate you coming by so much, David. This was awesome. Tell everyone on where they could find you online and what to look out for.
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm pretty easy to find. Like I'm on Instagram at David E. O'Leary, also at Twitter at the same, or X at the same handle, and then probably Facebook as well. So just Google David O'Leary writer and I'll pop up pretty easily. And please, like I sometimes answer DMs and things like that if people have questions. And then in terms of what to look out for, I'm shopping a couple of things right now. I'm excited about to be taking out a network pitch, and I'll just say that it's like an action show with great characters. So I'm excited about it. We got a great sort of producers and studio on board, so now we're just taking it into network. So fingers crossed on that one, and then check out the audio series I'm working on in the meanwhile.
We'll keep our eyes out for that series.
Thank you.
That was my chat with David O'Leary, the creator of the TV series Project Blue Book from the History Channel. Love the show, love aliens, love UFOs, I think you should too. Go check him out. Go check out more of David's stuff. His Pocket FM series, The Ghost Walker, is up right now as this episode is being published. So go check it out. Go check out my stuff, austinrwilson.com, and let me know. I have a contact page there. You can tell me if you want somebody to come on the show. You can donate if you want to support the show. Please like, subscribe, review, all of those things so the show can get out to more people and we can talk to more writers from all across the world and all walks of life and all different kinds of writing. Anytime you leave a rating, review, or share the show with somebody, it really helps. I appreciate it a ton. Get out there today, get back to the page, tell some stories.